Welcome to another edition of the Ranger Rush. This one being a bit of an emergency recording, coming at you with some disappointing trade news for the Rangers. Kaapo Kakko going over to the Seattle Kraken in exchange for defenseman Will Borgen and third-round pick and sixth-round picks in 2025, this upcoming draft. So then it's really not too surprising coming on the heels of Kakko's comments after his healthy scratch in St. Louis, where after years of being mistreated and, at least outwardly being a good soldier about it, talking about how his own play needed to be better, how he held himself accountable. This time was different. After his healthy scratch in St. Louis, Kakko told reporters, basically, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically said, like, hey, I haven't really been the worst guy. I'm not really on the ice for for that many goals against. I know we're trying to win games. I know I could be better, but it seems like an easy way out for the coach to single out a young guy and bench him. And Kakko, again, paraphrasing, but that was essentially the message. And I think he's right. I mean, you'll get some people who, some Ranger fans, social media, whatever it might be, will say, "Oh, he's a 6-year veteran. He's not a young guy. He's 23 years old. He's one of the youngest players on the team." And and saying, "Oh, he's underachieved and this and that." Okay, he's never going to live up to being a second overall pick and score at the level that anyone hoped, right? But at the end of the day, this guy's a useful player, a really good defensive forward, can chip in some offense as well, some secondary scoring, and was maybe, not playing great the last few weeks. Frankly, very few players on the Rangers have, and he was far from the top of the list of biggest issues the Rangers had. So totally understood his frustration there. Lo and behold, a day or two later, he gets dealt over to the Seattle Kraken. The reports coming out that this had that whole those comments, the quotes he had to the press. Reports coming out from Kevin Weeks, other NHL writers that had nothing to do with the trade, this and that. Yeah, I'm guessing that those are well-placed sources in the Rangers organization who are giving Weeks and others that info. It's really, how can it be a coincidence that the trade happens now, right? That being said, even if Kakko, to be fair, even if Kakko hadn't made those comments, this trade wouldn't have surprised me. It seems that the Rangers it feels like they've been disappointed in his production, which on the surface you understand. He's a second overall pick. You want him to score more. You want him to pan out more. But at the same time, I think his development was badly mishandled. I think it goes back to David Quinn and Gerard Gallant really jerking him around. And frankly, Peter Laviolette wasn't really any better in that regard with him. What he did for Alexis Lafreniere's game, he did not do for Kaapo Kakko's game. Is some of that on the player? Sure. But, we'll never know this, but I do wonder if he had those early years, those immediate post-draft years back with another organization that was better at player development, how much better off would he be in his career right now? So I'm not surprised. Again, I'm not surprised it happened, but I'm disappointed that a second overall pick that we were all excited about 5 years ago when the Rangers took him, this is how it ends up. He doesn't really produce a whole lot, even though he's still a pretty useful player, and they get not a whole lot back for him. So let's dive into that before maybe we circle back to Kakko and some of the Rangers, kind of bigger macro issues. So they get Will Borgen. He's really just a depth defenseman. He did play all 82 games for the Kraken each of the past 2 seasons. He's not going to give you a ton of offense. Had 25 points last year. That was a career high on 22 assists. Has just 1 goal, 1 assist in 33 games for Seattle this season. He's 28 years old. Well, as of actually December 19th. So as of this recording, his birthday is tomorrow. So happy birthday, Will Borgen. You get to be traded to a team that's in the midst of a massive existential crisis. So I hope you have fun with that. His salary, his AAV is $2.7 million. It's actually higher than Kakko's, who's at 2.4. But he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. And Kakko is a restricted free agent, 1 more year to go before he would become unrestricted, barring potential extension in Seattle. So I understand the Rangers wanting to move on from Kakko. Well, I do and I don't. I mean, I'm not surprised they did it. I would have rather they held on to him and kept a useful player who's pretty affordable. But if they're going to trade him, which again seemed inevitable to me based on how the relationship was deteriorating, if they're going to trade him, I would rather he be a package for a bigger piece coming in. So, but I don't really understand the Rangers' plan here. I know that at this point his value is not super high. They weren't going to get a lot back for just him, but Borgen's not really going to move the needle for you. And like I said, you're losing a player who was useful. He was part of your most effective line with Will Cooley and Philip Hedl. This that you had this season, most consistent, most effective line when they were together. So what's the Rangers' plan? Are they going to potentially fully sell off as much as they can with some of the contracts they have on the books that are hard to move, and go into another rebuild, or are they trying to still win now and salvage this season? I mean, either way you look at it, the trade doesn't really make sense as far as the return, right? Like you're trading a useful and fairly cheap 23-year-old who still has some upside. Not I don't think second overall pick type upside anymore, but still some upside there. For a 28-year-old depth defenseman, that just doesn't really seem smart. It doesn't seem smart for the present. It doesn't seem smart for the future. So, and then the third and sixth round picks, I mean, those are lottery tickets. Those are unlikely to turn into anything. It'd be great if they do, but you can't assume they will. So anyway, don't really understand, I guess, again, I understand in a vacuum, why they felt why the organization gave up on Kakko, but it's disappointing that it came to this based on how his development was handled. How often does a second overall pick come into a team that already has some established veterans? He comes in, you've already got the Rangers had actually that just acquired Artemi Panarin, Jacob Trouba at that time. They had Mika Zibanejad, who was, really getting into his prime years, and so Kakko never really got those top line, top power play minutes. And so never really got to develop the offensive side of his game. As a depth forward, he eventually got better at the defensive side of his game, and he's really an asset in that regard. But just never became the prolific scorer that you would have wanted to see from a second overall pick when you're in the midst of a rebuild. You're trying to get young, dynamic talent that's going to be with you for the long haul. So I think the Rangers bungled his development, and at the end of the day, I think they just had enough. And my guess would be, this is just me speculating, that his comments the other day, were the straw that broke the camel's back. But that being said, I think he was going to be out during or after this season, one way or the other, which is sad because the Rangers, rather than try to mend a relationship with him or give him more opportunities, trust him more, they end up getting rid of a good player, who adds some value on not a big contract and not really getting anything back in return that's really going to help you in a big way in the short or the long term. So again, it's a disappointing trade. I thought the Jacob Trouba trade was an excellent one for the Rangers. Granted, what's the line from 21 Jump Street with Ice Cube character? Congratulations, you managed to unfuck a situation you originally fucked up. I mean, yes, it's not great that they had to clean up that mess, but at least they did, right? Kakko wasn't really a mess until the Rangers made it one with how they treated him and eventually had a disgruntled player on their hands. But he could have added value to this team. So I don't really know their plan here. I just, and maybe I feel like I say that a lot with this team, at least every few years when they have some major drama. 3 years ago, it was the Jeff Gorton and John Davidson firings to put Drury in as GM and president. Now it's this free fall that they're in, 3-11 in their last 14 games. I don't know if I can ever recall a quicker, more dramatic fall from grace. It's a team that won the President's Trophy last season and came within 2 wins of Stanley Cup final. So again, but this season has brought to light a lot of the Rangers' issues on the ice with how they defend, or I guess how they don't defend. Their even strength play, to put it lightly. And then from an organizational front office standpoint, I wrote a couple of years ago when they had alienated Vitaly Kravtsov and Elias Anderson, you know, pretty close together, and eventually traded both those players away without ever getting much from them after drafting them as top 10 first round picks. The Rangers have a developmental problem. I mean, and it's weird that or maybe it's not weird, but it's happening a lot with European players. Elias Anderson, Swedish. Vitaly Kravtsov, Russian. Nils Lundqvist, defenseman, they traded away to Dallas, Swedish. Kaapo Kakko, Finnish. So what's going on here with the Rangers development? They take these first round picks, and Anderson at the time, I didn't think it was a good pick. I thought it was a reach, but he was still a first round talent. I know they just took him a little early, but point is, besides that, like the guys they took, they weren't way off the board picks. Anderson being the only reach. They're all first round talents, or they were perceived to be consensus, and none of them have panned out. Is that all on them, or I think the Rangers have a share of the blame here. And Kakko was the best of those, but still never lived up to second round pick billing. And now the Rangers are left getting, frankly, spare parts for a player that was supposed to be a franchise cornerstone when they took him, and they were in the midst of their rebuild a few years ago. So, again, disappointing. I'm sure there's more to come with the Rangers as far as shaking things up. Maybe that's all this is, a shakeup, but if that's the case, it's pretty short-sighted. But again, it doesn't help you now. It doesn't help you in the future. So we'll see what happens here. I think there's, with the way the Rangers are playing, the way there's as much of a disaster this season's become the last month and a half. There's definitely more to come. So we'll see what that is and hold our breath that it's, a little less disappointing than what we saw here tonight with Kakko being dealt. Until then, and I mean this extremely half-heartedly, go Rangers.